Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about something that might surprise a lot of you, and that's why I'm actually cautiously optimistic about Bungie's new Marathon game despite everything we've seen over the past year. I know, the negativity around this game has been relentless between plagiarism accusations, the disappointing alpha receptions, comparisons to Concord, countless DOA comments. It feels like everyone's already written Marathon's obituary before it to even launch. But after watching the December Vision of Marathon ViDoc and seeing the community's shifting reaction, I genuinely think there are solid reasons to be hopeful. But first, let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. Marathon has had a rough journey and a lot of criticism has been deserved. The closed alpha in April was not great. The feedback was overwhelmingly negative. Players criticized the lack of proximity chat, no solo queue option, underwhelming AI enemies, pacing issues. The game launched its alpha right alongside Arc Raiders as well, which absolutely just dominated the conversation and still has, honestly. And Marathon came off looking worse by comparison. I think the optics were terrible. Then came the bombshell with the plagiarism scandal. An artist publicly accused Bungie of lifting her work from 2017 artwork designs for Marathon's environments. This artist, who goes by Anti-Real, had screenshots showing undeniable similarities. For a studio of Bungie's caliber, this was embarrassing and unacceptable, and it's also not the first time that it's happened. Recently, Anti-Real confirmed the issue was resolved to her satisfaction, but the damage to the public perception was done. There are people on the internet who think that Bungie stole an entire art style from just one person, which I think is just silly, to be completely honest. It's not like this art style didn't exist before 2017. Joseph Cross, who we'll talk about later on in the video, I mean, he's been doing this stuff forever as well. Seems like this type of art has been ingrained in his style for a long time. We need to also talk about the ghost that's haunting the entire conversation, and that's Concord. Sony's hero shooter became one of the most infamous flops in gaming history, lasting just 2 weeks before it was pulled. And because Marathon is also a Sony-backed premium price multiplayer shooter from a studio with Destiny DNA in its leadership, people immediately started drawing parallels. The Concord 2.0 label stuck hard, even though the games are fundamentally different. Also, behind the scenes, reports suggested morale at Bungie was in tatters. The game was delayed from September 2025 to an indefinite release window to now being March 2026. Jason Schreier mentioned that development sentiment wasn't great. There were some questions about whether it would hit future deadlines. Bungie went through layoffs, leadership changes happened, and this all has painted a troubled picture of production spiraling towards disaster. But here's where things, in my opinion, get interesting. In December, Bungie dropped the new ViDoc, and the response has been noticeably different. Just looking around the internet, the initial YouTube reaction started typically negative during the early stream. Lots of DOA and plagiarism game and plagiarism will make me God comments, but at the end of the ViDoc, I do think the general vibe had almost completely turned around, and I think that that alone is a positive sign that it's finally starting to turn the corner. You can go through the comments, you can go through Reddit, Twitter, all that stuff, and just see that there's definitely a little bit more positivity towards the game, a little bit more of a reception that is favorable for Bungie. So what changed? What did Bungie actually show us in that ViDoc? Bungie has directly addressed alpha feedback with concrete improvements. Proximity chat, after saying that it wouldn't be turned on due to toxicity concerns, they actually reversed course. I think seeing that Arc Raiders had that feature and the amount of social moments and alliances that can be made and the amount of content that can be created significantly outweighs whatever toxic scenario they've dreamed up. And I know this has been feedback that was given to them throughout their playtests. So hopefully this alone shows that they're more willing to listen to what, players are saying to them instead of being like, we know what's best. Solo queue was added. You can drop in alone. It's a major community request. I also think that this opens up the game to a much wider audience, as well as like a much wider concurrent player base. There's also a new character named Rook, where his whole vibe is dropping in the middle of a match solo and just kind of scavenging and getting out. It's a risk-free entry point, and I think that it's similar to what Arc Raiders has with their free loadouts. There are definitely improved visuals and UI. The game looks significantly better than the alpha footage. The art direction, that cyberpunk meets abandoned colony aesthetic is striking to me. I think that it's amazing. Quite honestly, it's one of the most unique designs that I think I've seen in a video game in a long time, and I know people will argue that as well. I'm sure there will be people in the comments who say that I'm an idiot, but that's fine. The environments look way better. The outdoors area, they've significantly given them a facelift. I also think that the weather system creates atmosphere that you don't normally get in games. Bungie also acknowledged that bots needed to be deadlier and they need to play a bigger role in the game, so they're promising AI enemies that actually matter in the risk-reward calculation, which I think will be massive, especially for people who aren't just dropping in for the PvP side of things. The ViDoc also really leaned into Marathon's sci-fi setting on Tau Ceti, where we got to see the progression system. You get to see Perimeter, which is like the tutorial kind of proving grounds map. Then you have Dire Marsh. It's the anomaly-scarred ruins. It's got better rewards. Then you have Outpost, which is the UESC forward base. It's got locked rooms. It's got really good loot. It's got a ton of PvE enemies. And then you have the Cryo Archive, which is like the in-game raid on the Marathon ship itself, with 7 progressive vaults and what they say is a mysterious final encounter. And quite honestly, this is classic Bungie world building. They're not just making an extraction shooter, they're creating a universe with environmental storytelling, persistent corpses that will decay over time, signaling danger, and dynamic weather, faction storylines. Honestly, I miss when like Halo was super mysterious and you didn't know everything. And with like Destiny 1, I think that they're just really good at creating these worlds that are so mysterious, and even if you get an answer to something, you're left with more questions, and I really, really miss that aspect of games. They also talked about their philosophy behind the gameplay. They described Marathon as playing poker with guns, and every run is about deciding what to risk, when to push deeper, when to extract. They're leaning into that tension and calculated decisions over just pure chaos. There's going to be 400 weapon mods, multiple implant types, different runner shell playstyles. There's actual real depth there. And I hope that this is something that will kind of set it apart from other extraction shooters. There's also, no pay-to-win mechanics. Reward passes won't expire. You can complete old passes at your own pace. So if you've ever played Halo Infinite, it's like that. The game will cost $40 at launch, with all future gameplay updates included for free. And quite honestly, that is the opposite of predatory monetization. I know that people will argue I'm paying $40, I'm only getting 4 maps, but you're also paying $40, and hopefully the game will stick around longer than 2 weeks, but you're getting everything after that as well. So why does all of this give me hope? The first thing is that Bungie is actually listening. I think the biggest takeaway from that ViDoc is they took all that harsh feedback seriously. They didn't just say, we hear you, that's kind of a meme, and make minor tweaks. I think that they implemented major feature additions that the community demanded, and that includes prox chat, solo queue, deadlier AI. And I think that takes humility and responsiveness. I think the delay was also necessary and extremely beneficial, and looking back, the plagiarism scandal and the feedback from the alpha forcing a delay might have been the absolute best thing that could have ever happened to Marathon and for Bungie. If Marathon had launched in September with all those issues, yes, I think it would have been a massive flop, similar to Concord. The extra development time has let them course correct, and several months of closed monthly playtests behind NDA has allowed them to iterate without public scrutiny. Here might be a controversial take, but I think that the Arc Raiders' success has actually helped Marathon. When Arc launched, extraction shooters were still niche. now there's a mainstream audience that understands the genre and actually has an appetite for it. And Arc Raiders proved extraction shooters can work as premium titles and generate excitement. Marathon doesn't have to educate the market now. Arc did that. It just has to offer a compelling alternative. I also think that it can't directly go up against Arc as well. And that's because Marathon isn't just copying Arc. The sci-fi setting, Bungie's signature gunplay, runner consciousness, transfer mechanics, vertical progression through their factions, raid-like endgame on the Marathon ship. I think that differentiates this IP from its competitors. I also think that Arc is way more lighthearted and a little bit more community focused, while Marathon is darker and grittier and that PvP side of things. And I think that there's room for both. I also think that Bungie's legacy still does matter, even though despite recent struggles, Bungie created Halo and Destiny. They know how to make shooters feel incredible to play. We've seen multiple testers talk about the alpha and how the gunplay was solid. And I think that that's the foundation everything else builds on. If the core shooting is going to feel good, which has been Bungie's bread and butter, the rest can work. They also still have a little bit of time left. March 2026 means there's still a couple more months to polish and market and build hype. I think January is going to have more news. They're not rushing out a half-baked product anymore. If anything, we're like at 75%. I think with that and the community coming around, the sentiment shifting, all of these things actually matter. And I also think that Sony learned from Concord. I know that they've talked about how they put in more rigorous evaluation systems in place, and they're not going to let another high-profile failure happen without intervention. And the fact that Sony is still supporting Marathon's, March 2026 release suggests that their internal metrics show promise. There's one more piece of news that I want to address, and literally happened like this week, and that's that Joseph Cross, Marathon's franchise art director, has left Bungie. Now, he had been with Bungie for over a decade, working on Destiny as a concept artist and as a senior art director and leading Marathon's art direction, but he has left just 3 months before the game's launch. He confirmed to Kotaku that it was his decision to leave, saying he's proud of the project and what the team accomplished. He's incredibly proud of the visual world they built, and the art team at Bungie is the best in the business. But here's kind of where I want to share my honest opinion. I don't have any real, background, insider information on this, but this is my honest opinion. I think there's a real possibility that he became sort of a scapegoat for the whole plagiarism scandal. He was the art director who had to publicly appear on a live stream with the game director to apologize for the art theft incident. He was the face of that controversy, even though Bungie's official statement blamed a former artist for including the unauthorized designs. Now, I'm not saying that, he stole anything, but when you're the art director, you're responsible for the pipeline, the review process, and ultimately what ships in the game. I just don't see him actually, if he had known, I think he would have stopped it. But here's also why I think he might have been pushed out despite it officially being his decision. I think the timing is super suspicious. You don't really see people leave 3 months before launch when you've spent, half a decade building something, unless there is pressure. And I think that most creatives want to see their project through to completion. I could have seen him leaving after launch. Also, Marathon's art direction is one of the few things that has been consistently praised. The ViDoc proved the game looks incredible. If art was the problem, that would be one thing, but the art is the strength. The problems were gameplay and features and the plagiarism oversight, not the visual direction itself. And I think somebody had to take the fall. Bungie went through layoffs, they've faced Sony scrutiny after Concord, and dealt with massive community backlash. And when things go wrong at that scale, corporations often look for someone to shoulder the blame, even if the systemic issues run deeper. Now, of course, there are reasons he genuinely wanted to leave. His work could have been largely finished. The visual direction was locked in. Bungie has been a chaotic place to work at lately with layoffs and low morale. Maybe he just wanted out. He might have had job offers elsewhere or creative projects he wants to pursue. I know he's had Dune and stuff in his bio. And he does sound positive in his statements, and he did share clips from the ViDoc proudly on social media, and that doesn't really sound like someone who left on bad terms. So I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Was he explicitly fired? Probably not. Was there pressure, whether direct or indirect, that made staying just hard for him? Possibly. Did he see the writing on the wall and just decide to leave on his own terms? That's probably my guess. And what frustrates me is the plagiarism issue was a pipeline and oversight problem, not an art direction problem. And if the story's true, the person who included those stolen assets wasn't even at Bungie anymore when the scandal broke, so he was left holding the bag of failures from Bungie's review process. But regardless of how or why he left, it's a loss for Marathon. I truly think that he built a visually stunning world, and losing that creative vision just 3 months before launch is not ideal, even if the art is locked in. But the silver lining, the art direction is done, the visual identity is established, the team that he built is still there, and honestly, if his departure means that Bungie has made structural changes to prevent future plagiarism issues, this might be a necessary step forward. I just hope that they don't lose the aesthetic, a year into the game and make it something that doesn't even resemble what it is today. There are challenges that still remain. Arc Raiders is established, Escape from Tarkov has that hardcore extraction niche down, Hunt Showdown also has its niche. Marathon has to carve out a space quickly. In a world of free-to-play shooters, asking for $40 is also a risk. Other games have succeeded at that price, Helldivers 2, but it was way more PvE co-op, and Marathon is PvPvE, which is a little bit more divisive. And fair or not, the comparisons with Concord will follow Marathon until launch and even after. And I feel like just one little mistake and the I told you so crowd will just be deafening. And all these promises mean nothing if the launch is buggy, servers are unstable, or the balance is off. Bungie cannot afford a rough launch. So here's my honest take. I think Marathon has a genuine shot at success if Bungie executes on what they showed in December. The game won't be an Arc killer or a Tarkov killer. It doesn't need to be. It needs to find its own audience, people who want Bungie quality gunplay in a sci-fi extraction setting with interesting world building. And I think that audience absolutely exists. To me, the comparison to Concord was always unfair, and Concord was a hero shooter entering an oversaturated market with no hook and extremely minimal marketing. Marathon is an extraction shooter entering a proven market with a strong aesthetic, Bungie's pedigree, and transparent design philosophy. What gives me hope the most is that Bungie seems to have learned from mistakes. They delayed the game, they listened to feedback, they made hard pivots on features they initially resisted. But for the first time in a long time, I'm a little optimistic about Marathon. I think that ViDoc showed a studio that's still fighting for the project, and I think that actually counts for something. Something that I think about a lot is a former Concord visual effects artist who posted on the Marathon subreddit after seeing the, Concord 2.0 hate. And he said, "I worked on Concord and did my best. We came up short. Please don't punish others for our mistakes. We are all human beings. We're trying to create something special, and Marathon is no different." And I really do think that resonates with people. Every game deserves a fair chance, and Marathon has had a troubled journey, and it's not over yet. So that's why I have hope for Marathon. It's not blind optimism, but cautious hope based on concrete improvements in a studio showing responsiveness to criticism. Will it succeed? We'll find out in March 2026. But honestly, I just want more good games to play. What do you think? Are you willing to give Marathon a chance, or has the negativity turned you off completely? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more gaming videos. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.